Hi all. Today I'd like to share with you a very special interview that we recorded a couple days ago live. Um, Releasing it for this Memorial Day to remind you a little bit about what Memorial Day is really about. This is an interview that I did with a good friend of mine by the name of Brian Abbott, and another new friend by the name of Paul Schwimmer. These guys are part of an effort to bring our missing in action boys home from some of the incursions over the past couple years. Actually, over the past almost 100 years. They're working on a project in the Pacific right now. And without further ado, here's that interview.
The largest fleet ever assembled in the Pacific. Battleships, cruisers, carriers, and transports. Steams for Tarawa.
Hi guys, hey, I'm live here with Brian Abbott and Paul Schwimmer, and we are going to talk about World War II MIAs in the Pacific and the recovery effort that's ongoing on those lines. So it's kind of an interesting topic, and we've got some guys with some pretty good stories. Paul, welcome aboard, man. Start telling your stories.
Oh, where do you start? Well, Brian and I have done 2 missions so far together. I think the first one was in 2016. That was on the island of Tarawa. We lost 1,000 Marines in that. They've recovered on the island so far. But Brian and I were also interested in going out into the lagoon where the landing craft attempted to come in and Brian, with his expertise, can take it from here and tell you what we got on that mission.
Yeah, it's Paul and I. I'll take a step back a little bit and regress. Paul and I met at a Michigan Surveyors Conference down near Detroit. I was giving a talk on underwater acoustics, and so within a year or so, Paul invited me to go to Tarawa, and I took a piece of kit over there called a scanning sonar. And it sits on a tripod on bottom, spins around, takes an image of the bottom. And Paul had been there a few times before, so he kind of knew the layout of the land. And so we ended up renting a boat from a local marina there, and we were out in the lagoon for about 2 weeks. And we ended up finding about 12 different types of vehicles. We found tanks, we found landing craft, Higgins boats, LVTs. It was quite surprising to me that we found that many vehicles, and I'm not sure that these vehicles were known about either, because Paul did the diving, I ran the combox and the sonar, putting them on targets. And Paul, you can talk about a little bit about what you found on these tanks and vehicles that we located.
Yeah, we have to go back a little bit farther than that, Brian, because for some reason the weather was horrific.
Yeah, it was.
We had footers coming in on us in the lagoon. In Tarawa, which is a third world, fourth world, fifth world nation, the winch on the anchor didn't work, so we had 4 locals that were trying to pull the anchor up. And there was a 40-footer we were on, 35, 40-footer. And we'd set the anchor and we'd get dragged across the lagoon, and Brian needed a stationary. So a couple days we've been doing this, struggling, and then one day we just stopped cold. We thought, okay, the anchor hit a chunk of coral. And Brian did this thing. He goes, man, there's something on it. And we tried to raise the anchor and we couldn't. So one of the local boys, he free dove down. He comes back up and he's trying to tell us that, we were at a wreck. And so Kristen Baker, who is our archaeologist, and a diver, she and I suited up, and we went down the anchor line, and I'll be damned, if that anchor line and the 20-foot of chain were not wrapped through the bogey wheels of an M3 Stewart tank laying on its top. So that was one of the first new tanks that we found.
Now, did you guys were you guys attempting to do recoveries at that time, or just identify the wrecks?
You know, all the tanks have got UXO in them, laying out. This was a pilot project to see about doing the rest of the lagoon, and there is some interest in having us go back there to do it. But we were finding them, marking them. We were laying on the bottom, looking inside the best we could. A year before, we had found one tank and put a camera into it. But no, we were just we were trying to get as much land covered as possible. And the real goal out there, of course, is the one remaining B-24 bomber that crashed. And we took a stab at that, and then had to go back and work on our pilot project. So what has to happen now is that the Navy has to come in, somebody has to come in, pick those vehicles up off the bottom, open them up, take the unexploded ordnance out of them, and then we'll put our tiniest little archaeologist in there, you know, head first, higher by her feet, and let her go in there and see if the kids are there.
Yeah, because I was amazed what the sonar was showing us, crates of mortar rounds, 50 cal, grenades. They're still on bottom around these vehicles and stuff. So it's been a really a touchy thing. I mean, we did have EOD people working with us and so forth to make sure things were handled and properly done there. But we, it's like Paul said, there's still a ton of unexploded ordnance around these vehicles.
One of the other problems we had is that the lagoon was at that time, and probably is, still highly polluted with a lot of human waste. There's not a good sanitation on this island, so we're wearing full face masks. And then we also had a silting problem where you had some good viz down to about 15 feet, and then you went into this milk. And we called it mud pupping. You know, we'd lower ourselves all the way to the bottom and just use our hands and pull ourselves along the bottom. And Brian would talk us, because if he had this special sonar he could visually watch us on the bottom, and he would talk us right into the targets. And, you know, you'd be going along with 1 meter viz, and all of a sudden here's this tank or a landing. The thing that messes me up is when you're mud pupping across the bottom, you come across a helmet or a gas mask or something like that, and you knew that there was a kid there. So it weighs on you when you do, as you probably know, James, it weighs on you.
Yeah, well, and it's, as I try to explain it to some people sometime about, you know, because inevitably someone will say, why are you doing that? Seriously, why have you been doing this for so long? And the only thing I can come up with is, the families need to know that this is over for them, that there's closure, that they can have some kind of a service or a funeral, and knowing that you're doing something like that is what seems to make it work. Because, you know, I always hear people, oh, don't you have nightmares? Don't you know, the first time you bagged somebody, didn't that bother you quite a bit? And, you know, and I'll say, no, not really. That's not, you don't think about that. It's like you have this armor. The armor that you're wearing is the knowledge that you're going to provide closure for somebody. And
my armor was pseudo. My armor was PTSD, and I lost 4 years trying to figure out what I was going through. And then, you know, I just wanted someone to tell me what I was feeling. And then one of my docs finally picked it up, and so I just drink now. You know, I'm not being funny. I just, you know, when I'm doing recoveries at the evening, I drink. It's not normal what we do. It's not normal.
Well, I think.
But you're absolutely right. When you bring the kids home, you know, I was just down in Marion, Indiana for a funeral, 3 weeks ago. And it doesn't matter if they died 70 years ago or, in your case, you know, a month ago. People still care.
Yeah, and they have to, especially some of these guys that have passed, even 60, 70, 80 years ago, there are still people that care. There are still people that this affects them. There's uncles and aunts they were uncles and aunts and grandfathers of people that only knew them for a short period of time, or didn't know them at all, or just heard the stories about their lives.
Well, one of the things that I found interesting is we're also helping another gentleman. I won't say his name except for his first name, and Tom, and he only met his dad once, and he was 3 months old. His father disappeared on a flight bombing run up to Venice, Italy. Then the plane fell apart, flew up over the North Adriatic, and by the grace of God, about 5-6 years ago, a fisherman dragged up a 50 caliber machine gun. That serial number on the machine gun matches his father's plane. So, it gives from a 20,000 square mile area down to maybe a 50 square mile area where this plane could be. But just working with these people to give them some closure about their life and so forth, to me, I don't think I could do anything better in my life. And I've done a lot of different things. And to give these people some form of closure, I think is critically important.
It's huge. It is huge. And it doesn't matter if it's well, it does matter. If somebody dies, one of our servicemen dies in war, or somebody jumps off a boat and goes right to the bottom, and it happened 2 days ago. The families still need to be, still need closure. The thing that really bothered me for a long time was the story about Tarawa and how long it was that everybody was there, and the way they were buried. That bothered me quite a bit. I thought that was pretty disrespectful for our government to do something like that.
I don't know. People may not understand, but after the war was over, they had the cemeteries there and everything. Paul can speak to this too, but they brought back an island population, and it just exploded on the island. And I think it's upwards of, this island's a half mile wide and maybe 4 miles long, Paul? 5?
No, it's 3/4 miles long by maybe 6 meters wide.
Yeah, there's 35,000 people live on this island.
Yeah.
And it's just insane. It's open raw sewage. They built buildings on top of the cemeteries. History Flight has gone in there and literally jacked up buildings around the harbor and dug underneath the building to remove the remains of our boys that were left there.
Well, the thing that got me was, if you look at the statistics, that how many people died there on the island, how many soldiers and sailors and Marines that died on the island, and then you look at the number that they recovered, it doesn't jive. There were more soldiers, Marines, and Navy personnel were recovered than what the government claims that we lost. And so it led.
Well, you have to realize, it was so hot there that they were using bulldozer trenches, and they'd pick the boys up in their ponchos. And I was pretty naive at first when we thought they'd put them head to toe. Well, they didn't. They had to get them in the ground as fast as they could, so they just literally threw them into the bottom of the trenches. And when we do the recoveries in those trenches, the kids, they're spooned together, they're sprawled on top of one another.
It's like a mass grave.
It is, but everybody, people don't realize. But when you get the next boy in procession, and you clean off the poncho and you photograph and measure it, the first thing you do when you pull the poncho off is you have to disarm the kid.
Yeah.
The most we ever did was 5 hand grenades on one boy that came in, and the thing that gets you as you're recovering this boy in the wall, the next boy starting to show himself, going, here I am, come get me.
Right.
So, there was 1,000 Marines dead. I've been to Tarawa 7 times now, and I've done recoveries. We did the 10 one time. We got the Medal of Honor recipient, Lieutenant Alexander Bonneman. He was one of the guys we got. I went back. They called me up and then said they had 4 kids under a house, and they wanted to know if I could go back, which we did. My team did. and they had bought the house, tore it down, and just pulled the foundation when we got there. I never got to those 4 kids because we found 3 more on the way down. And I work for a living, so I can only give 2 weeks at a time for this. But yeah, so we just found. I understand they just found Lost Road D.
Oh, really? Okay.
Of Cemetery 33 in Tarawa, and there's supposed to be 47 kids in there, and the teams are extracting them right now.
And
that's Tarawa.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Yap.
Yeah, Yap is a whole nother story, right?
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
in the middle of nowhere.
I've been on 22 missions so far.
It's nowhere. I mean, it's the end of the line. To me, Yap was so much different than Tarawa. Why Tarawa was kind of like third world, fourth, fifth, sixth world. Yap wasn't. I found Yap a great place, and I found it fairly clean and great people and stuff like that there. I had a wonderful time there. I know we were there for totally different reason, but the guys at the dive shop and the hotel and everything, I thought were phenomenal and stuff.
On Yap, they had, in 2006 they found a U.S. Navy Hellcat that had impacted, been shot down. There had been a mid-air collision and went down. And our focus was to go back with Brian's technology and to see if we could get the main fuselage, especially the cockpit area. And so we did 20 dives, 35 feet down to 105. And what we ended up doing was focusing on collecting all the wreckage, or locating all the wreckage we could along the reef, condensing to that where we thought the impact site was, and then we went down into the bottom of the lagoon, and that's where we started. We think we've got the cockpit area, and Brian can tell you what we pulled up on that.
Yeah, we pulled up a lot of components of the plane and so forth. We picked stuff up on sonar. It was a very difficult site to use sonar on, being in the middle of a reef, and it was at least probably a good 45, 50 degree slope from about.
It could be a little steeper
Okay.
than that. Yeah, it could be. You had to watch when you were working on the reef. You had to try to keep your head up to make sure nothing was coming down. It was that steep. All dead. The reef was all dead.
Now that's from the pollution from the island, or what was the?
I'm not really sure.
I don't. I know that island's pretty clean. I think it was just a natural transgression. The reefs around the outside were beautiful, they say, but we never got to see them. Just in this area. So when we say we were pulling parts up, we were not destroying the reef at all. But it's also important to note that every part we pulled up and photographed and identified, we put right back down again.
And as soon as we looked. No, go ahead, Paul.
I'm saying when we got done, I remember I was laying on the bottom. Probably my hands were shoved down in about 2 feet of straight muck, and I was trying to follow these electric cables to see another piece of fuselage. And Rick Smith, our master diver, visibility at that time was absolutely zero. And I felt this tap on my shoulder, and I put air into my BC, and I went up, and Rick had part of the cockpit dashboard in his hands. And as soon as I saw that, I called it off. I go, okay, we're here. This is beyond our expertise. I don't want to disturb the boy if he's down in this area. So at that point, we called the search off at that point, and we felt that we had done as much.
And that's where the Navy would provide a underwater archaeologist, or or whatever their protocol is for recovering.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. We don't have the funds. We would not have the money to go in there and to do that kind of a recovery. Plus, the worst thing the biggest fear you have is destroying evidence. If you've only got a small fragment. When we do the recoveries in Europe and you're finding, if you're lucky, 5 or 6 pieces of the boy, well, that's enough. As long as you do an identification. But, so you don't want to destroy anything. On Tarawa, we're finding the complete boys. But on Yap, we need to turn that one over to the federal government and let them bring in their team.
There's also on Yap 2 missing B-24 bombers. One is located, that we believe, outside the main channel on the east side of the island, and the other is located in the southwest corner off the reef maybe, but it gets very deep very fast outside the reef there. And we went inside the channel, we worked the channel, because there is evidence from a gentleman that lived on the island, he's now deceased, that said he's seen the plane crash as a boy. And it didn't really crash, it floated, it landed and floated, and a couple of people on board the plane were able to get off and swim to the reef, but the Japanese patrol picked them up. And we're not sure what happened to them. I think they believe they were sent to Palau, but they may have been executed on Palau or not. We're just not sure what happened to these. But, that's another reason that we need to go back, because, we have, I don't know what the crew size was of B-24, 8 to 10 men. And, there's 20 men right there that are missing that need to be found.
B-24, let's see if I got a picture of one.
Yeah, there should be 8 more kids on that B-24. We took a couple stabs at going after that one, but with the trade winds coming in, the surf breaking on the reef and the tides coming out, the IDHL was just too high, immediate danger to health and life, and we called that off too. We're going to go back, if we can raise the funds, we're going to go back when the doldrums are there, and then different equipment, but it got too dangerous for us. And so we wisely pulled off.
Yeah. We did coming into the channel. We went and explored the channel for probably at least a quarter mile. We probably did about 25 different sonar drops up and down the channel that comes in there and so forth. But just trying to get outside that channel was really, really a difficult situation. But I got to admit, I was really happy. The boat I thought was excellent that we were able to obtain, and the crew I thought was fantastic. They really worked their butts off for us, and because it's not an easy thing to do, pick that tripod up and down all day long, and those guys did it for us, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, so, but they're not 36.
They're a lot younger too. So
I remember the first day. When we got on board, and I'm counting the air tanks, and I'm looking at them, I go, where are my tanks? And they're looking at me going, you're going to dive? And I go, well, yeah, I'm going to dive. Why wouldn't you think I would? Well, how old are you, sir? I go, what has that got to do with anything? You young punk snot behind your kid? And so then after the first day, we were set.
Yeah,
they had to put my harness on because my left arm doesn't work. But they'd clip me in, we'd roll off, and then Brian would talk to us. And it was safe. With the communication on board, with Brian being able to talk to us. The only complaint I have about Brian, and especially in Tarawa, when I was diving solo, and then I'd come up, you couldn't see anything. You'd come up, and he would play the tape, and you could see me swimming toward a wreck, and then you would see something very large about 10 meters from me, and you go, Brian, what is that? And he goes, well, I don't know. It looks like a very large fish, doesn't it?
I didn't think you had an issue with that. Just letting you know what's going on. So.
Out of sight, out of mind, baby. If I couldn't see it, I couldn't worry about it.
Yeah, so, you won't. A fish that big take a big bite. You won't notice it.
That was one thing that was kind of cool. We'd see these swarms on the sonar a couple of times, and I started asking Mikey and Charlie, our two divers from the Yap Divers Resort, and they'd say, "Oh, those are barracuda swarming through things." So we'd have those types of things keep us on our toes and so forth. So it was good.
That's really strange, because that's the first time I ever heard that story. You
would always ignore me. You wouldn't listen to me what I had to say anyway. So.
All right, let's talk about what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we're trying to raise funds. We want to go back. We want to go after the B-24 bombers. We want to go after Anderson's bomber that may be within our striking distance. It's going to take a different set of gear, different funding. We're trying to get an estimate right now. I had a source of funding, and and that's no longer viable. So we're trying GoFundMe, we're trying billboards. It's not working very well, but everybody loves what we do.
Why did I just lose you?
History Flight wants us to go back into the lagoon and expand that search too, but it's going to take money, and we don't have the money right now.
What we need the equipment that we need is side scan, which is easy to get, but we'll be working in possibly 800 to 1,000 feet of water, and you're going to need a cable 1 to 3, 1 to 4 ratio of depth to length. So if we're in 100 feet of water, we're going to be needing a 400-foot cable.
And I'm not diving that deep.
And, you don't want to dive that deep. So we've got this possibility of, I think these are, like Paul said, are very obtainable. We just need the right setup, and we need a right, if we get the guys back on the boat and stuff like this, I think they could do a really good job, but we need a different type of setup to go do that. So
somebody's got to go find them,
yes.
Brian, and it might as well be.
I agree 100%. That's, like I said, if I could do this for the rest of my life, I'd be a very happy camper. So.
Yep.
I definitely agree.
So like I said, I've got a standing invitation to go to Europe all summer long. We've got 5 bombers under a group called History Flight, another group we work with. So we've got 5 bombers over there that we're trying to get people to go work on the digs. And then it sounds like we're trying to put a team together for YAP for 2020. The only difference is I'll be 71 instead of 70.
You got to start lying at a lot earlier age. So for
well, thank goodness that's what they got.
So for 20 years, I lied and said I was 36. A couple years ago, I said it's time for me to, basically for the next 20 years, man up and say that I'm 38. Yeah, so. That's how you do it. And I tell you what, your age is 100% mental. I do believe that. If you act like a child like I do long enough, you'll eventually stay young. You'll continue to stay young.
Yeah, my wife has accused me of never growing up.
Yeah, trust me, I know.
Which fine me.
I think that's
so the MIA.
I think that's part of the explorer mentality. I think that is actually what keeps explorers going, is the fact that they're still children.
Yeah, trapped inside us.
Exactly.
Well, the MIA, when we started this, I've been in it for 10 years now. Like I said, I've done 22 missions. It was all self-funded. And now we had some pretty big contributors for a while, to the point of like 1.3 million a year. We were getting funded, and then the government finally started funding us. But that's another whole different scenario. I don't want to badmouth the government, but thank you for funding us. But it's the status of funding. We've probably got Mark Noah, the founder of History Flight, says he's got 100 folders on his desk of kids we can go get right now. Come on, the best we've done so far is we brought one boy home who had 3 out of 4 surviving siblings come meet the airplane. When we brought Don Underwood home to Detroit, his brother George met the airplane. And then we took them down. These kids are heroes, and nobody can tell me that people don't care. We got the B-26 bomber in Belgium. The sister flew out there. I'm sure she kidnapped that Belgian Catholic priest, and he came out and did a service, because that's as close to her brother as she was ever going to be again. When we got Curtis in Normandy 2 years ago, the villagers were out there helping to dig. They haven't forgotten that this American boy, died in a P-47 Thunderbolt, freeing them. They had 2 services out there. Every day we went to Curtis's, on the picnic table was a vase with a fresh flower. And, there was a picture of him. And 2 of the old boys that showed up every day, we had to help them get out of their cars but they would carry buckets of material from the dig to the screens. They were paying it back. So yeah, people care. As long as we can keep going,
You know,
we're going.
one of the, I think, coolest things that's ever happened to me is that after I got back from that first trip to Tarawa with you, long story short, I was actually able to meet and interview a gentleman that landed on Green Beach at Tarawa. And he did Tarawa and Peleliu, and to talk to him about what we were finding and showing him pictures of the beaches and that in the areas, that was pretty traumatic for him. And it was also very, very humbling to me to meet somebody that had gone through those experiences like that, and to say that you're doing the right thing and you're bringing my people home to me was really critically important to me to because, like you've told me, there's almost 100,000 missing Americans in the 20th century from all the
83,000. Maybe it's around 80,000
now. Because I know they've been finding boys.
Yeah, most of them
World
War II.
You know, so to bring those people home, I think is extremely critical and important to us as a nation. So,
well,
right.
like,
if I can talk right to your audience, on the island of Yap, there's a Hellcat that crashed into the hillside. The boy is still there. I mean, we just need the money to go bring this American home. We'll go into the jungle. We'll bring the boy. But gosh, one of my friends who does this with me added up our pro bono and the time lost at work, and we're up to about $400,000 apiece on what we could have done if we hadn't gone after these boys. That's how important it is. We just need the funding to go get these kids.
Yeah,
there's my speech.
Well, we'll see if we can't get that going your direction.
So.
Yep.
Yeah, because it is expensive, and people don't realize how far that is out in the middle of absolute nowhere.
Well, to give you a case in point, we left from Detroit with about 20 boxes of luggage, and we flew from Detroit to Denver. It was a 4-hour flight. Denver to Hawaii was 8 hours. Hawaii to Guam was 8 hours. Then it's about a 2-hour flight from Guam to Yap, and you don't get in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at Yap. You arrive at 1:30 in the morning their time, and so it's the people are fantastic. I think one of the coolest things I've ever seen is that where it's like 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning, we're waiting for our flight, and we're just kind of BSing and stuff, and up walks our ship captain, and he's meeting us at the airport to make sure that everything went okay for us, and that we were going to get off all right and to say goodbye to us. I mean, that's the type of people they were. And, so what can you say? I mean, it was just a great experience, but I think, like Paul said, we have to go find these boys and bring them home. It's the only way to do it.
Well, when our live stream is done, I'm going to go and add some links and stuff to this video, and put your GoFundMe page up and some of the other. I'll probably do a slideshow of what you guys are doing on this last trip. Brian showed me a bunch of pictures, and
sure.
I'll put them together in a little slideshow, and people can see that you're not just going out there on vacation.
No, we worked every day from we got to the hotel at 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that, 3:30 in the morning, and all three of us are up by 9, going over, getting our boats, getting our dive gear, making sure the sonar operations. We were out on the water that day, and we worked all up until the day before we had to leave, because you don't want these. I'm worried about these old guys diving and stuff. I don't want them, blowing bubbles when they're flying and stuff like that. So we had to stop 24 hours before we took off and flying and stuff. But we worked, and it was 10, 12-hour days.
These trips like that, too, a lot of people don't realize how it takes a week to recover when you get home.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that is tough. That is tough going. A lot of people do not realize traveling like that for 2 weeks, when it takes you 2 days of travel time or 3 days of travel time, it takes you a couple days to recover.
And plus, I had been to the Philippines like 2 weeks before that. We were going after the Cabanatuan POW camp. And so I was in the Philippines for 2 weeks, flew home for a week, and then Brian came over, and off we went to Yap.
That'd have been tough. I don't know as I'd have come home.
Yeah,
I think I'd have just gone from one to the other.
Yeah, but I run my business full time. It got to the point, especially Tarawa. I would come home, and my wife and my son would want me to go to the Holiday Inn for a week because I'd always come home sick, either dengue fever or some kind of fungal respiratory stuff, or when I came back from Vietnam, I forget what I brought home from there. But, you're flying on these long-distance airplanes, and everybody's coughing. The locals are getting you, sick. The food's getting you sick. In fact, in Tarawa, we found out, to be fully honest, that the older guys, my age, we really should not go back. In fact, the last 2 times I did go back, it was against doctor's orders. Our immune systems just cannot fight off those diseases that they have there. It took me 3 months the last time I came home to quit coughing.
Well, in our case,
I guess it's a small.
But, it's like Tarawa.
It's
the middle of the Pacific, and it's like everyone thinks it's great, but on our way back, it took us 56 hours to get home. By the time we're door to door, and I was, that kicked my butt for a few days. I mean, you're staying up till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and you got to, I run my own company like Paul does, and you got to be at work at 8 o'clock or whatever. So it's not an easy thing to do. It takes a few days to get back into the swing of things.
I've always been kind of lucky. I can sleep on a 2x4 on edge. So my sleeping ability is...
Well, I can sleep too, but it's just, you look at the watch, and like Tara was 17 hours ahead in Eastern time. So you're like a day and a half, and it's noon, and it's midnight at home, and it's, 6 o'clock the next day and so forth. So it really messes you up for a while.
Yeah. It's a good cause, and it needs to be done. I sometimes feel ashamed that our government hasn't just said, you know what, we need to get this done. They're too busy, I guess, worrying about the fleas or something.
It's too involved. Yeah, it's too involved. It takes research. It takes teams. You have to bring the boy home. They have to do the identification. Then they have to find the relatives. And then they have to put together, bringing the boy home and then the ceremony. They've been doing it for a while. God bless them for doing it. Now they're letting the private sector give them a hand. And so we're getting them. We're getting them at first we got them one at a time. Now we're bringing them home 4 and 5 at a time.
That's good.
And it's just
Is there still a lot of MIAs in Vietnam?
No, I think there's about 1,600, they say. Maybe 800 are recoverable. But, you're back in the jungle, type of climate. And some of those are, it's pretty tough to get out of. And once again, you need the research. You need to find them. I've been asked to be embedded with the next team that goes to Koh Tang Island for the last 3 Marines killed in the last battle. But I don't think the government will ever let me go there. But I've offered to go to North Korea. When they started bringing kids back, and never heard back from them on that. I'll go anywhere, man. If there's an American boy there, we'll go. We'll go get him.
Very good.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
a big.
I mean, we should be very grateful and not forget them.
No, absolutely not. Never forget them.
Well, I'll go ahead and I'll add some stuff to this video, and like I said, with your GoFundMe page, and we'll try to get some interest fired up and push it forward for you.
If you've got some big corporation, dude, listening to these, buddy, we need you. We need some serious funding, and we'll bring the boys home. In fact, you get a big corporation that'll fund us, we'll take the dude with us. Or we'll take his kid with us. Or we'll take his veteran employee with us.
Yep. All right.
All right.
Well, let's, I I don't have a problem with circling around maybe in a month or so and doing this again if it's okay with you.
Doesn't matter to me.
I think we'll keep this on the front of
Sure.
everybody's brain that way, and keep pushing.
Yep. God willing, we'll do the
Sounds
next
good.
one from
Yeah, that'd be a good
overseas.
idea. That'd be cool. Live from Yap.
Yeah, live from Yap. That'll be really good. All right, so we'll get this up and running and talk to you again soon.
All right,
Thanks,
man.
you
Thanks,
too.
Paul.
Take care.
Good to see you.
Well, thanks for listening. And as we spoke about in the interview, there's been a GoFundMe page set up to help fund the next mission to go to Yap, the island of Yap. And it is, you go to GoFundMe.com and search for American MIA POW Recovery in Micronesia. And anything you can do would be helpful, and I'm sure they would appreciate it. And we all should appreciate it. They're going to bring our soldiers, sailors, and airmen home that made the ultimate sacrifice. They paid the ultimate sacrifice for your freedom. And so we feel it's a very worthy cause to get this done. So with that, I'm going to be signing off. Take care, and this is Memorial Day weekend this weekend, so please remember what Memorial Day is about. It's about those individuals. I'm Jim Nowka. God bless.